So thank you very much, both of you, for joining here for our very first story on Ko-fi, which is my platform for online digital storytelling that anybody can join from £5 a month for a story. And the theme of the stories is always to inspire and to enchant and to empower. And uh, who am I to suggest I could do such a thing? Well, I've been storytelling now as a full-time profession for 29 years, in all sorts of different venues, from schools to museums to prisons to castles and everything in between. And I know the power of stories to transform. And I'm going to share with both of you right now, a story which I hope you're both very magical ladies in your own right. I don't think there's anything but good in reminders of the existence of spirit and the existence of miracles in life. Partly because of the fact I am a storyteller by profession, which means I've told three stories already today in different settings, one of which was in front of an audience of 4-year-olds who'd been fed chocolate for somebody's birthday. That was interesting. So stories really are a big part of my life. I mean, nearly every day I'm telling stories to at least one audience or another. And as I say, it's been several audiences today. Um, but through that, it creates a certain magic. I really do honestly believe that anything is possible. The only thing that I don't believe is possible is the impossible itself. I do believe it's because of that that my life has been filled with so many wonders, like hearing that the whales were endangered one year. So wanted to see what I could do to help protect the whales. And I ended up leading a campaign that turned back the entire Japanese whaling fleet. I mean, who can say they've done such a thing? Me, because I really do know that anything's possible. So this is a story, a true story of something that happened to me probably about 10 or 15 years ago now, and my two nieces. So these are the daughters of my brother. They live in the Australian bush, which is an interesting lifestyle in itself. However, on this occasion where this story takes place, we weren't in the Australian bush. We were in the suburb of Collaroy, which is a beachside suburb in the city of Sydney, and we were visiting my mum for Christmas. And this particular true story took place on what for Australia was the summer solstice, so the longest day of the year, and for England would have been the winter solstice. And part of my profession as a storyteller has been to engage in celebrations of annual dates that in the past, at least, and for a handful of people in the present, are celebrated as special. For example, today, Christmas is celebrated by people all around the Western world. But something like the winter solstice or summer solstice is still celebrated by a much smaller number of people. The whole idea of the solstices, with the winter solstice, of course, is to welcome in the sun, to say we've got the whole of we're in the shortest day of the year. We've got to this point. We've got a lot more cold ahead of us if you happen to be in England. But the days are going to start getting longer and the sun is coming back. Let's have a celebration to honor the return of the sun. And of course, if you're in the longest day of the year, then you're giving thanks to the sun. And I also think it's nice to give thanks to all of the elements because Pachamama, the earth, is giving us bounties in every season. Anyway, so there I was in the suburb of Sydney, which has in the suburb of Collaroy in Sydney, which has its own beach called Collaroy Beach, with my two nieces who were probably aged about 10 and 12 back then. Their names are Lila and Em. And I said to them, "Oh, today's the summer solstice." I said, "What's that?" I said, "The longest day of the year." I said, "A lot of my friends in England right now will be celebrating the winter solstice, which is the shortest day of the year. And they'll be doing all sorts of crazy and fabulous things like doing song circles and all sorts of ceremonies." And they said to me, "What's a ceremony, Uncle Adrian?" I said, I tell you what, let's do one. Shall we go down to the beach and create a ceremony rather than me tell you what one is? And they said, yes, great. So off we went on this lovely, sunny, hot summer's day, the longest day of the year there in Australia. Went down to the beach. And what we ended up doing was we created a Vesica Pisces, which, in case you don't know, a Vesica Pisces is two circles that interjoin. I can't really do it properly with my hands, but you can see my hands are interlinking there. The circles interlinking like that. So they match across each other. So there's a part where the two circles are joined. We made a big Vesica Pisces on the sand. And when I say big, that was probably sort of 15 foot across each circle. It was like building a sand castle, just piling the sand up in these two big circles and making sure they had a bit where they interlinked. And the bit that interlinked, we filled up with lots of dry seaweed and shells. And then we put shells and seaweed all around the edges of it. It took at least an hour or more to make it look really beautiful. And we did the whole thing in the spirit of we're honoring the earth, we're honoring the seasons here. We're making this big Vesica Pisces as a thank you to the summer solstice and also to connect to people all around the world who may be doing ceremonies of their own in the interest of world peace and togetherness. Well, this in itself wouldn't really make it a story. I mean, it might, just a brief one. But the magic right now is, I'd say, maybe a 3 or 4 out of 10. Although, of course, it's by creating ceremony that we often bring in real magic. Well, right at the end of a lot of Australian beaches is a swimming pool. It's there. These pools are sort of built into the rock. And at Collaroy, there's a big swimming pool. It's filled up with seawater as the high tide comes in every day, and that refreshes the water and keeps it clean. And around the great big swimming pool, there's an amazing big bed of rock, which has got lots of water holes in it. And a lot of the rock is really rippled, and there's tiny little, sea snails, and there's all sorts of anemones that you can put we love putting our fingers into them. And they grab hold, and you can pull your finger out. You can feel it sucking on your finger, and they're of every type of color. And I love that sort of thing, exploring the seaside and exploring rock pools. Has been part of my childhood, and there I was with my nieces doing the same thing, and they'd done it many times before too. We came to this one quite large pool, considering it was just rock pools everywhere. Some of them were only in, an inch or two deep. Well, there was this one big rock pool, this big bed of rock, that was several meters deep and several meters wide. And we were just going around putting our fingers in all the anemones and looking at the different sea snails that were sliding around and crabs scuttling across the rocks, having just done the ceremony with the Vesica Pisces, of course, for the summer and winter solstices, when all of a sudden, one of my nieces suddenly said, Uncle Adrian, what's that? And we looked into the water. I remember this body of water was a couple of meters deep, maybe, and several meters wide. And we saw swimming around in the water a dragon. Now, this dragon, I'll show you exactly what it looked like because about a year later, in a little village in England, I saw the exact image of the dragon that we'd seen in the rock pool. And this is it right here. If you can see this little dragon, it was about this size. So you can see if I put it in my hand there, look, just hold that up for you guys to see. It's a little dragon that can fit in my hand. This is a little ornamental dragon in my hand. But the one that's swimming around in the rock pool in this true story was not ornamental. It was flesh and blood and scales. We thought it looked just like a dragon that you might imagine a dragon would look like from a film, in that it had two wings and a long tail. It had little ridges along the back of its back and tail, just like the little ridges you can see there. It really was as close to this dragon as you could possibly get, except it was swimming around in the waterhole. If you can imagine what a dragon would look like in real flight, up in the air, turning and weaving, sort of like an eagle or a hawk might do, just riding the wind with its wings, not bothering to flap, just gliding, a dragon might in the air, we imagine. Well, that's exactly what this little dragon was doing in that water hole, just turning and weaving and kind of playing in the dance of the water around it. And we stood there watching, spellbound, excited, like I'd never seen a real dragon before with my eyes. And the fact it was so small took away any sense of fear you might feel if you saw a real dragon. I mean, this guy was so little he could sit in your hand. And I promise you that every part of this story is absolutely true. There's never any need to exaggerate the miracles in life. This tiny little fellow, or maybe it was a tiny little lass, she was just swimming around in this water hole in front of our eyes, and we just were enchanted, talking excitedly and watching quietly. For, well, there is no such thing as time. Sometimes it feels like time is something that is enslaving us. We can hardly have enough of it, but time doesn't really exist. What does exist is change. And we stood there for a while without wanting to change anything, just watching this enchanting little dragon swimming around in the water. We wondered if we went away, would we ever see it again? And of course, after a while, we did go away, and we never did see that dragon again. All we've got is the story and the memory of it. But we are three people in the world who can say, quite honestly, to the question, have you ever seen a real dragon? Like, not in your imagination, but really seen one? We can say, yes, we have. It was the dragon in the rock pool. So wonders never cease. But we're only really halfway through the story because then we were heading back up to my mother's home. So we left the rock pools and we walked past the big beach pool and along the concrete path that runs along the back of the beach. We had to cross a very busy road and then walk up a very steep bank, a big tree-lined street to another much quieter street. And that quiet street was there between the high bank we just walked up and the block of flats where my mother lived. She's moved house now, actually. Same suburb, different block of flats. So we crossed this quiet street to my mother's block of flats. And when we crossed the street, there were, obviously it's modern day Sydney, so people have power in their homes, and to have power, you need to have power lines, and those power lines are on top of great big telegraph poles. Well, we stopped on a strip of grass that was lining this little quiet residential street, having just made the Vesica Pisces for the winter solstice and so the summer solstice, communicating with the winter solstice in England and trying to share love and oneness with all of humanity was part of the purpose of the ceremony that we'd done, and thanking Pachamama, the earth, for all her gifts. Of course, we'd seen this little dragon. We thought the magic was over, except for sharing the story with Grandma, as my nieces call my mum, and wondering, will she believe it? And I said, well, she may or may not believe it. She's quite, she's a lovely mother, lovely mum and a lovely woman, but she worked as like a banker, an executive trainer in universities and stuff, and she's not quite so in touch with the world of spirit and certainly the world of magic as I am. I mean, you want her to run a conference for a bank. I couldn't do that very well. She'd be great at that, but maybe her eyes aren't that open to magic. And maybe when we turn up with my nieces and me, her son, the storyteller, who she's never really understood, bless her. Saying we've seen a little baby dragon, she might go, yeah, yes, of course you have. Of course you did. Yeah, that's nice. No, but we really did. That's lovely. So we're wondering, would she believe us? It doesn't matter whether she believes us because we know what we saw. By the way, A lot of people the things, don't believe in things they can't see. I'm in front of audiences all the time. Like I say today, I've been in front of several online audiences and one real life flesh and blood audience in the same room as me. And people sometimes find it hard to believe in something that they can't see. I will often say to those people, I'll ask them a question which would appear in an A level physics question in secondary school, sometimes in the exam, so I've been told. And the question is, what percentage of color and light can the human eye see? What that question is really asking is what percentage of color and light that our scientific instruments can perceive in 2024. Our best scientific instruments for perceiving color and light, what they can see, what percentage can we see with our naked eye? And everything that we can see, sight is color and light. That's what it's composed of. Now you might like to pause for a minute and give yourself an answer. What would you say? What percentage would you say it is? I'll tell you what the answer is now. The actual answer is one factor over 1,000. In other words, for every single thing that is real, like you guys, even through the ether of the internet, you can see the mask behind me on the door. You can see the big palm behind me. You can see me. And these things are all real. You could see this little ornament dragon, and it's real. Look, I'm holding it in my hand. It's a physical manifest object. But for every single thing we can see, according to physics, there's 999 real things that we can't see. So just because you've not seen anything doesn't mean it doesn't exist. In fact, most things that do exist, we will never see. And that's a fact. I guess most people have never seen a suitcase filled with $2 million stuffed, and you can hardly put the zip around that big suitcase with the $2 million in. But we do know that somewhere in the world there is probably several suitcases stuffed with money. I've never seen one, but I know they're out there, and I know anything's possible. I do believe in the dragon, and my niece is still now 10 years later believe in the dragon. But as we were stood there on the strip of grass underneath the telegraph pole that was holding up the power lines, giving power to all the flats, including my mum's, we suddenly heard goo ga 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 ga, goo ga 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 ga. We looked up, and there, up on the power pole, was a kookaburra, and it was looking down at us and laughing at us. And we went goo ga 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 back up at it, and suddenly, well, we hadn't seen it in its beak, but something dropped at our feet. We heard it plonk there on the grass next to us. The thing that landed next to us from the kookaburra is my kookaburra crown. Very recently, I've taken this crown for 10 years to some of my storytellings and told this story very many times. Only actually this year in a gong meditation sound session with storytelling that I was part of, a lady was holding this. No, actually, I passed it to her, and as I passed it to her, it split. Now, this could be anything in stories, couldn't it? This great big gold ring. I call it my kookaburra crown because a kookaburra gave it to me. I mean, it's a crown because it can sit on your head like that. It looks like something that a Roman lord might wear on his head. We call it the kookaburra crown. We call it the kookaburra crown. In stories, it could be the ring of an enormous giant, except now it's a little bit broken. But it doesn't stop it being just as magical. Now it's become a magical belt instead. The point being, a kookaburra dropped this on the ground next to us. On the day we saw the dragon, on the day we'd done the ceremony for the summer solstice on Collaroy Beach, making the great big Vesica Pisces out of sand and seaweed and shells. And so when we went up to my mum, my nieces could say to their grandmother, look what we were given by a kookaburra. And they had something manifest to show her. She wasn't sure a kookaburra had really given it to us, but a kookaburra really did. And she's perhaps even less sure about the dragon. Everything is possible. And everything around us really is an imprint of our own dreaming. If ever you find yourself sad or frustrated or lacking in gratitude and appreciation for the pure wonder of life, I'd suggest you just stop for a moment, do a few deep breaths, really deep breaths, holding the air in your lungs and then letting it release slowly. And remember the miracles that have happened in your life, the miracle of life itself, the laughter, the joy, the play, the serenity, the joy. So many moments. And if you can't think of any, you could at least think of the story of the dragon and the kookaburra crown to help you realize, to help you remember that there really is magic in the world and it manifests 3D into our reality. And all that you need to do, if you feel a little bit departed from that magic, is believe that anything's possible and breathe and appreciate, and it will come to you as a blessing of the miracle of life. Go well, be safe, breathe deep. So, for anybody listening in who enjoyed that story and you feel that you'd like to be part of our interactive story sessions, which would normally include a Q&A where we can talk about the story afterwards, any issues that were raised or inspiration that was given throughout that story. We have a bit of a discussion group afterwards. Please do join me on kofi.com/Adrian Beckingham. And you can be part of my storytelling membership group, and the magic happens there. So thank you very much. You will find a link to the Kofi group. That's spelled ko/fi.com/Adrian Beckingham. You will find it in the description for this video. So please do join us. It's anything from £5 a month, and you can cancel anytime, or you can also make a one-off donation. And it supports my work as a storyteller. A lot of the places where I perform do pay me to go, but there's always places that can't afford to have me go in. For example, in storytelling for poorly children in hospitals or for elderly people in care homes. And me turning up to work, i.e. storytelling, unpaid, can be quite difficult. Just as though if I was a greengrocer or a carpenter or a mechanic, we all have to make ends meet. So your donations really do go towards a good cause, which is my community storytelling. If you feel tempted, I'm not asking you to give me anything in return for nothing. If you do make a donation or join up as a regular monthly member, which is I'll repeat myself, you can cancel at any time. You will be receiving from me storytelling sessions to enchant and inspire you, as well as knowing that it helps me go out into community groups. So with that, I say thank you very, very much. Much appreciated.